So today is the first week after the TREB numbers have come out. And so what I want to quickly do is I want to go over the data points for the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board with respect to the data concerning the Greater Toronto Area and what's happened year over year. And then we'll quickly dive into the weekly statistics like we do every single week. So for those of you that have been following the dialogue, it's pretty straightforward. 2.5 months of inventory. We are very much sitting in a seller's market across the GTA for all property types. Okay. Average days on market. Again, don't confuse these two metrics. They're a different thing. Average days on market, 32 days, which is not abnormal for this time of the year. Now, price year over year, this is kind of what we predicted. It was a 3% increase, 2022 versus 2023. And for those of you that have been a part of these calls, you can see that despite all of these rate increases and us sitting at 5% now, and one of the highest times of economic downturn with inflation and everything, prices have remained relatively stable. And year over year, December to December, we're up 3%, which means that if you bought a property last December, despite everything we saw starting in January up until this point, you earned money in equity. Not a whole lot, but you still pocketed on average, if you look at this number, $34,000. And out of your $7,200 mortgage payment, at least $1,500 to $1,600 went into the principal. So if you add the 34 and the 16 or 1,700, average family pocketed in equity $40,000 plus. What's the alternative? Rent. That's not a great alternative in this market. And based on everything we're seeing and hearing, the next rate announcement, things aren't going to change in terms of the rates going up. Everything is starting to ease and things are looking very optimistic. Now, there is something that I'm doing a little bit different this week. What I've done is I've actually mapped all of the transactions. Now, you must have seen one of those infographics that I posted in the closed Facebook group the other day saying that we've seen the lowest number of transactions in the last 23 years that we saw in 2023. So when we did our last annual summit, by the way, our next one is February 10th. I'll be sending out those invites this week. So keep that in your calendars, February 10th at the Delta, information to follow. So our annual event will go over the same numbers like we did last year. If you remember me on stage last year, you'll recall me telling you about one of the worst years we've seen on the record. This year, I'm going to tell you we saw an even worse record. And if you look at what we saw last year, we saw 75,000 transactions in 2022. That's what I announced at the last AGM. This year, we're down another 10. Over 77,000 agents in the GTA had 66,000 transactions to account for. If you look, and I've mapped this on purpose, if you look at this amount, this is the lowest number of sales we've seen since the year 2000. And that's coming after the late 90s and all that other stuff that my dad saw where he was buying properties at 19 or 20%. So if you look at that data, you look at the fact that the prices have consistently gone up year over year, even though we had a short number of transaction year, this next year is going to be a game changer. And I'll give you some simple math to think about. If I pull up a calculator and we take, just generally speaking, 65,000 transactions. If we subtract that from 121,000, we lost on average, say, 50,000 transactions. Being very conservative, not even including land transfer tax in Toronto, if I take 50,000 units, number of sales we lost, and I multiply that by $10,000 in land transfer tax, we lost 500 million in just land transfer tax on average. There's an article we're going to publish tomorrow. You're going to get a nice little infographic like you have the last couple of Toronto Star stories, where it was reported that the city of Toronto has a $1.8 billion deficit. Imagine the amount of money that we lost just in land transfer tax. Think about the photographers that didn't get paid, the commissions that didn't get paid, the stagers that didn't get paid. Real estate is an economic engine. We have an election year coming up next year. And so this year, things have to be different. We can't afford, from an economic perspective, for things to look like they looked last year. So we're expecting pretty favorable changes for the economy in general. Now, going back to this infographic, wrapping it up, year over year, number of sales went up by 11%, which is also very encouraging again. Average price went up. And for most property types, what I've done here is I've mapped detached because a lot of you are interested in that. On average, most property types went up in value. We saw an average dip of about 0.67%, but think about what we were up against year over year. So this is very optimistic information. So that's the story December to December. It's been all right compared, all things considered. Now let's go back and look at the weekly data. So normally what I've done is I've dived right into the weekly data, but this week what I want to do is before I do that, I want to quickly touch on number of listings and sales because this is very relative in our analysis of these data points. So if you look at last week, we had 489 listings and 157 sales. Extrapolating that data, we're sitting at about 3.11 months of inventory. Still a seller's market. So seller's market is 0 to 4 months, 4 to 6 is a balanced market, buyer's market is 6 plus. So assuming and extrapolating this data, we're currently sitting at 3.11 months of inventory on the freehold market. Now, this isn't a whole lot of data points for us to compare. And so when I start talking about weekly prices and averages and number of transactions, you do have to keep this information in mind. That was the same caveat I provided last week. So now that we understand that, if we look at the active sale average, we've been on a pretty steady decline, but it hasn't been major. And again, we don't have a lot of data points that we're taking from here in coming up with these numbers. I think as the number of transactions, number of listings go up, we'll start seeing more rounder averages and more optimistic data points. In terms of average days on market on the freehold side, we're sitting at around 41 days on average for GTA freehold properties week over week. So we're up a little bit. This time of the year, this is normal. We start seeing things correct as the days get longer, which they are. And we get not less cold. It's going to snow tonight, unfortunately, but things start turning around a little bit as we approach the spring. Now, in terms of sale price, again, we're sitting at 1.2, not a whole lot of data to compare. We're not looking at a week with 2185 listings and 660 sales. We're looking at 489 and 157 sales. So week over week, we're down. If I take this and I put it on a monthly spread, you can see it's not that bad. It's still quite reasonable. Now, going from here, we're going to look at the same thing on the condo front. So condo side, condo apartments, not including Halton region and GTA, story is very similar. 461 listings, it's up quite substantially, even compared to the freehold side. 84 sales. Comparing that to the data we've got here, the average ask to sell ratio, it's not as bad, but it's still on a decline. Properties are selling close to asking. We haven't seen a resurgence of multiple offers just yet. In terms of average days on market, closer to 50 days here. Extrapolating the type of market we're sitting in on for condos, we're sitting in a pretty balanced market for condominiums. So for somebody looking for a condo right now, this might be a key time because you might be able to leverage what's happening in terms of inventory versus number of sales. In terms of average sale price, again, similar story, not so many numbers to look at week over week, but we're sitting at just about $666,000 on average. Now, in terms of expectations, we know that the Conservative government in the province of Ontario has a mandate to put out 1.8 million homes in the next 10 years. Good luck with that. We don't have enough tradespeople to do that. Immigration is not slowing down. I'm predicting that as soon as interest rates start going in the other direction and inflationary pressures have receded, they wouldn't decrease the rates if they didn't recede. Once those two things start affecting your affordability price points, I think you're going to see a huge rush to the market. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again. Anybody that has a client sitting on the fence right now, do a demo like this with them. I promise you, as soon as the rates start coming down a little bit, there's going to be no skill required again. We're going to be back to the same rat race, multiple offers over asking. So for somebody that's looking for a deal, this is your period. As soon as the next rate announcement either holds it or it starts decreasing, things are going to look very different. Anybody, and actually I should say, I've talked to a couple of the agents with listings in our office. Right now, the feedback has been for certain property types that we are seeing multiple offers. If you're in the $500,000 to $800,000 range, in the outskirts, places like Durham region, we're starting to see 15, 20 offers on each property at this time. So it's coming. It's not too far. Anybody have any feedback or anything to add? Okay. Fantastic. So I will see you guys at the training this Thursday. This is also a hybrid session. Would love to see some faces in the office. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.